It's that time where we are pretty much due for a new commander release in Rise of Kingdoms, and today I'll be trying to predict the next commanders coming to the game, looking at what commander type we may see coming into Rise of Kingdoms. So if you're interested in the next commander release, which commanders they could be, how strong I think they'll be, and types of debuffs, buffs, whatever I think they may have, you want to stick around till the end of the video. Now, as always with these commander predictions, it's very important I put one key note out there, and that is these are exactly as the title says. They are predictions. They're not a guarantee. I don't know what's going to come to the game 100%, but we can make some very educated guesses as to what types of commanders we could see. I have been pretty accurate in the past with what I've said. For example, I said pretty much Zulang's release. I called it before he was even announced, before his skills were leaked, before he was shown. I pretty much called his release. Shajar, I was slightly close. Of course, I did not predict the mighty healing and the brand new mechanic, but I did predict the fact that she would be buffing archer units, as I had a feeling that archers were due for a buff due to the fact that every other troop type received a commander that was going to be doing that. So I'll be doing the exact same thing, but this time with the next commander release cycle, trying to predict what the next commanders will do, how strong they will be, and whether or not I think they'll have certain types of skills. So that is what we're going to be doing. It's based on predictions, previous commander releases, trends of commander releases, and maybe some stuff Lilith has said. But this is all just my prediction. So there's no magic here. I don't have an insider in Lilith. I could be completely wrong. I could be completely right. And it may just be a bit of a coincidence. But I will try and use as many guesses that will be as educated as possible to try and drive this to be as accurate as it can possibly be. Other than that, the first thing we should start off with is just quite simply what types of commanders will we be seeing next. And really, Lilith, besides the curveball they throw in every now and again, like with the release of Ragnar, who just came out of nowhere, there is a pretty standard release cycle. Cavalry, infantry, archers, engineering, and leadership, and then the cycle repeats. Cavalry, infantry, archers, engineering, leadership. So that is pretty much what we are going to be due for. We just received archers. That means we can expect a leadership and engineering commanders. That's pretty much a guarantee. Obviously, it could change. I doubt there's going to be another curveball thrown in there after Ragnar. We could probably guarantee that the next commanders will be a leadership with 2 engineering. The reason I say 2 engineering commanders, for the last 2 release cycles, we have seen 2 engineering commanders and 1 leadership commander. So, for example, we saw Heraclius, and then we got both of the first ranged engineering commanders, and then we saw Lapu Lapu, and we got the other 2 ranged engineering commanders. So that is pretty much, I would bet, like my bottom dollar. That's what we're going to see next. Obviously not a guarantee, but 2 engineering with a leadership is quite common. The next thing I will look at, though, is the leadership commander itself. And I have been guessing this for a long time, and it still hasn't happened. I think we're going to see something good with Trajan. Trajan is officially bad. Let's be real, you don't use him anywhere besides maybe Canyon, and other than that, he's not even that amazing in Canyon. He's starting to fall off as we see power creep with new commanders. So I think we could see a new Trajan-like commander. We could just see a new commander who works well with Trajan, but I think that's one very high possibility for the leadership commander. The fact that we will see something that is decent with Trajan, maybe something that is a better version of Trajan, it's highly likely. I think there's a very good chance of it happening, and it would be my main prediction if I had to guess. Another thing that can kind of reinforce this is the fact that Lilith did say they were looking at making leadership a little bit more relevant. I don't remember exactly when they said this, but they did mention it. They were looking at more leadership field commander ideas. So I think that something with Trajan is possible. Another thing is they could just go for another all-rounder like Honda. Honda is pretty much useless nowadays, so if they did a new version of Honda, we could see another strong commander added to the game, and it would just be a pretty stock standard good open field commander. And again, that is another pretty much certain possibility that could happen, and it would be within my top 2 guesses. Other than that, we may see some crazy new mechanic if Lilith decides to do something ridiculous like that. Now, do I have a high feeling about that? Yeah, nah, I don't really think Lilith would do something crazy for leadership, especially because leadership are a really specific troop type. It's like they have specific equipment. They are really just trying to work with every commander. I don't think we're going to see something super niche. I don't think leadership will receive something like archers where we got mighty healing or infantry getting smite damage. While it is a possibility, it wouldn't be my number 1 guess. It would be down there with one of my lower guesses, purely for the fact that when it comes down to it, I don't see why you would make leadership a more niche commander pairing. It would just make them more difficult to serve their purpose of being broad and widely used commanders. So if I really would try and guess, and something I think would actually be good for the game, put a new Trajan or a stronger Trajan, and that would be good. Because Trajan, I think it does serve a good role nowadays. He just doesn't have a really good pairing. And if you get someone that can really boost him, we could see him come back into the meta. Or if you just get a better Trajan, we could see a buffing march at least become more relevant on the open field. I don't see Trajan like at all nowadays. No matter how much field fighting I do, Trajan, he just doesn't exist. So when it comes down to it, really, we think that I'd say at least Trajan is worthy of getting some new form of a commander or just some new pairing, and it would be my number one guess. The types of buffs I think we could see on this new commander, and this is where I'm getting ultra specific, and it means that the guess is a little bit less likely. I think we might just first of all see more damage, because 300 damage factor is literally nothing. So I think we could see more damage factor on this new commander, somewhere within the range of 1.5 to maybe even 2,000, which would be insane. Probably about 1,500 would be okay. And then the buff, I think we could see something a little bit more broad in terms of this. Maybe we see an all damage buff. That could be really, really good, and it would stack pretty well with Belisarius Prime. I think the rage gain on Trajan is definitely a very nice thing. I don't know if we will see that. Maybe we get something that gives an AoE, let's say, rage debuff. That's certainly possible for a support march. On an active skill, at least, I could see that. So let's say this march did 1,500 damage to a single target, and then it boosted 5 of your nearby allied or friendly troops and debuffed 5 enemy troops. I could see that being very possible. So the fact that we could see that coming into the game, I think, is a possibility. With just pretty beefy stats like Trajan as a support march, you kind of want him to tank, and then you would just give him a bunch of other normal leadership stuff. Also, maybe we do see a support march that does have it in a way where you're able to do a lot of debuffs on it as well. I've been noticing a bit of a reduction in the amount of debuffs that we have seen with other commanders. So besides the only commander who recently has had very high debuffs, it'd be Belisarius Prime, but he's got an otherwise pretty average kit. It's just his expertise that is good. But when you look at commanders like even, let's say, William Wallace, there's really no amazing debuffs there. I mean, he's a good commander. He just really does lack some type of a debuff throughout his pretty much whole entire kit, if you're being fully honest. So I think that there is a good chance we do see some commander for leadership who's giving buffs and doing some pretty potent debuffs, probably passives so that they don't wear out too fast. I think a passive commander debuff thing would be strong, and I think it is likely because we just haven't seen debuffs. Even Shajar, her best debuff is a 50% march speed reduction, which, while good, there's like 1,000 other commanders with march speed reductions on their active skills. So I think that there's a good chance we see a leadership commander who's doing what Trajan does and does it better with good debuffs and is overall just a really, really support-heavy commander who's going to be a strong march in your field. I see that being possible. I see it being very, very doable, and I could see it being a powerful march. That does change the meta a bit and will make leadership a little bit more relevant. Another thing also just to note, if we do see a Honda-like commander, again, I just think they're going to be very broad. They'll pretty much work with anybody. I don't really want to put this as my main guess, mainly because we've seen a lot of troop specialization where troops are getting really specific. Archers, mighty healing, that's probably where they're going to go. Infantry, smite damage, probably where they're going to go. Cavalry, I've heard that they do combo damage. I don't know about that. I'm not too versed in the cavalry combo damage scene. But if they do combo damage, maybe that's where cavalry will end up going. I don't see how a generic commander like Honda could be very possible. Maybe there's some way to integrate it. Maybe there's a thing where if they're with archers, they do mighty heal and true damage. And if they're with cavalry, they do combo. And if they're with infantry, they do smite. That's possible, but I feel like that would just be a lot of effort, and it probably isn't very likely. So I think there's a chance we could see Honda or a Honda-like commander who is still generic and does work, but it isn't going to be a 100% thing, and it definitely wouldn't be my top of the prediction list. Possibility, sure. Top prediction, probably, or I would say almost definitely not. The last prediction I'll put out there, and I'll just put this one pretty much offhandedly, there's a chance we see a leadership rally. The last one we saw was Suleiman, and he sucked. We could maybe get another one who works good, like Heraclius style good, where he just works with everybody, and it's possible, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I wouldn't say it's unlikely. I wouldn't say it's very likely, though. Heraclius, really, leadership work better in a garrison situation just because you can fill with mixed troops and it still does well. But when it comes down to rallying, that doesn't tend to do as good. But I still think it's possible because when you look at the current rally scene, for example, you've got, I think it's Ashurbanipal with like Henry or Herman. That's a good rally, but I think Ashwani Park could get a better pairing out of it. Then you've got the infantry scene. I've heard Scipio Aurelianus, and I've seen him do pretty good, but he can probably get a slightly better pairing. So some leadership rally, certainly possible. I don't think it's very likely, but a possibility nonetheless. And I wouldn't be like too apprehensive to that idea. So there's definitely a chance that we do see that. And it is highly possible that we do just get a leadership rally and there's no field commander at all. But I don't think that would be what happened, because I did hear Lilith, or at least I remember reading somewhere, unless I'm going crazy, that Lilith does want to make leadership commanders a little bit more viable, or at least a little bit more commonplace on the open field, especially since the fall off of Honda and Trajan, because you used to see at least 1 or 2 leadership marches every now and again. But Honda, he isn't good anymore. Trajan, not so good anymore. So they pretty much never used. The next key aspect to talk about is engineering and range commanders. These will probably be the bulk of the release, if we're being fully honest, just because usually the engineering commanders get 2 and the leadership commanders get 1 commander. So engineering, there is something we should note, and I can pretty much guarantee Lilith said this, and again, I don't remember when. It was around the same time when they spoke about leadership. There was complaints that range commanders were a bit too overpowered, and Lilith said they were going to do something to work towards them not being as ridiculous as they are. So I think the next range commanders probably won't be as overpowered as someone like Gonzalo, who's just really, really strong. They're probably going to be towards like the average range of a range commander at least. Maybe somewhere around the level of Barbara or Margaret, who are strong range commanders but not absolutely ridiculous. Gonzalo is crazy strong because he's got ranged AoE and smite damage. I don't think that we're going to see something like that again. I think we'll see something a little bit more average. Probably something similar to, I think the best way to explain the power level, something similar to the power level of maybe Shajar, or something maybe even weaker, something similar to the power level of Belisarius Prime. Those are certainly possibilities. I would say that they're definitely possible. Something that's just a little bit weaker. In terms of range commanders themselves, I mean, it's very hard to try and guess what could be coming, just because every single range commander is fairly different. There's no one range commander, I would say, that is pretty much the same. They're all relatively different. Let's say, for example, Gajamata, he's got overtime damage. Gajamata has overtime damage. Barbara is just a DPS commander. Margaret is more of a normal damage commander. Gonzalo is an AoE range commander. They're all fully different, so I couldn't really give you an idea of what we would see next. If I were to guess, maybe more range smite. I think it was a successful thing. I don't see why they wouldn't do it, but I don't also see why they would. It might make Gonzalo too overpowered, but I could see range smite to give Gonzalo an official solidified pairing besides, I think, his best being Margaret. So Gonzalo most likely will get some smite commander who is good with him, and I wouldn't say that is too crazy. Gajamata, I mean, he's average, so I don't think he's going to get anything too crazy. He also does have range smite damage, to be fair, so there is, again, just a good chance we do see range smite. But maybe they just do a normal range damage factor commander, so that Barbara can become a little bit more meta again. That is also certainly possible. I wouldn't say it is unlikely, and I would say that is definitely a fairly high possibility of happening. So if I had to guess, we could see range smite, we could just see range direct damage, but there is a very high chance we just see 2 fairly strong but not meta-breaking range commanders. Now, in terms of when I think these commanders could release, I'm pretty sure that Archers release sometime around like September or very early October. I'm forgetting the date now. I could go check, but actually I can check really easily. I'll just go on Shajar. So I would say that because Archers released a little bit under a month ago now, we're probably still 2 to 3 months out from the next commander release, the next proper release cycle. But keep in mind, we do often see the engineering and leadership commanders come a little bit earlier just because they are not the most popular cycle. So there's a good chance we just see these guys come out within the next month and a half to 2 months because most players probably won't invest in them. That being said, I don't think they're going to be bad. Like, they're not bad investments, but there isn't as many siege mains as there are cav mains, archer mains, and infantry mains, or even just as many people who will run these commanders. So we could see them within the next 2 months. I don't think that's too crazy. I think that is certainly reasonable and possible, just because Lilith usually does these commanders as fast as they can to move on to the next cycle and make more cavs, infantry, and archers. So I do see this being a high possibility that we see these new ranged commanders out within probably about a month to 2 months from now, and I would say that is fairly high possibility. As to where I think the commanders will release, the leadership commander, funny enough, all of them have been MGE recently, but I think the next one, if it's an open field commander, will probably be in a Wheel of Fortune. I don't see why they would do an engineering commander that's a leadership commander that's for the open field in an MGE. it will just limit their usage by a lot. So I see the next leadership commander probably being somewhere in the Wheel of Fortune, or maybe in some event that allows you to unlock them. So that's possible. I wouldn't really be saying that's not possible. They could still be in the MGE, but if they're in the MGE, they're probably going to be a leadership rally, would be my guess. So if we see a field leadership commander, they're going to be Wheel of Fortune. If we see a rally, probably MGE. In terms of the engineering commanders, we tend to see them come with some sort of event. I'm pretty sure, I know Margaret did come with an event. She comes when you first enter Season of Conquest. And I know that Barbara is a wheel commander. So I think one commander for the next one will be a wheel commander, and one will be some type of an event commander. I forgot what event Garjamada came in, but when you push the plus here, it says he comes from an event, and it doesn't say the Mightiest Governor. So Garjamada, probably also available from an event or something along those lines. But when you see someone like Nebu, you can see he shows up in the Mightiest Governor list. So I think that the next engineering commanders, at least, will probably be one wheel and one event-based commander. Or maybe because we just got Ragnar, who is probably going to be an event-based commander, we could see both of the leadership commanders being the Wheel of Fortune, or one being in the MG and one being in the Wheel of Fortune. Or maybe they just put them both into the Legendary Tavern, or at least just one into the Legendary Tavern upon release. So that is a way to access him. I don't think that's highly likely, but it is certainly a possibility that we could see for the release of engineering commanders. Now, if you enjoyed today's video and you found my ideas of what commander releases could be coming next kind of interesting, tell me your ideas down below. I mean, commander releases are very, very, very subjective. We don't know what's going to be coming. It's all up to Lilith at the end of the day. So you might have a completely different idea of what commanders could be releasing into the game. So if you have an idea of who we could be seeing in the game in the near future, please do tell me in the comments down below. I'm always interested to read them. And sometimes you guys have really good ideas and I'm like, wow, I should have thought about that, or that's just a really interesting perspective. So tell me in the comments which commanders or your idea of the commander release for the upcoming cycle. Maybe you think we'll just skip the leadership and go straight to cavalry. Tell me whatever you think it may be. I will always respond to pretty much every comment. At least I will try and give it a heart. So if you have a comment, tell me down below. I'm very interested to see what you guys think. But other than that, I just want to say thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.